Forget everything you think you know about haunted houses. Forget creaking floors and cold spots. This is not an ordinary ghost story. We're talking about a place a bishop called the most evil he had ever visited. A place where a man was dragged, screaming, from his bed by a demonic force on his very first night. We're talking about ritual daggers and the skeletons of children discovered beneath the floorboards. And we're talking about a building deliberately erected on a 5,000-year-old pagan burial ground, directly over a crossing of energy lines. Not a house, a portal. Welcome to Bedtime Chillers. This is the ancient Ram Inn, and whatever lives inside, it's been waiting for us. The story of the inn's modern terror begins in 1968. The building, then a pub, had served its last beer and was declared derelict. It was scheduled for demolition to widen the road. A man named John Humphreys bought it for the meager sum of £2,600, intending to save and preserve the historic structure. He didn't know he had just purchased a life sentence. It was 1968. John Humphreys was an ex-soldier, a large, strong, and pragmatic construction worker. He was not the type to be frightened by creaking sounds in the night. On his very first night in the house, he received his welcome. He had gone to sleep when he was suddenly awakened by an indescribable cold. An icy, inhuman force had grabbed his arm. Before he could react, he was torn, screaming, from the bed and onto the floor. An unseen, demonic presence dragged him across the floorboards toward another part of the room. John fought back with all his strength, but he was powerless. His daughter, Caroline, has recounted his horrifying story of how he felt his wrists being pulled backward as if they were being dragged straight through the solid wall. That first night was only the beginning. John's wife, Mary, and his daughters, Caroline and Julie, were also terrorized. They were subjected to violent poltergeist activity, saw shadow figures rushing through the corridors, and felt a constant, oppressive, malevolent presence. They were pushed on the stairs and heard inexplicable whispers. Soon, the terror was too great. John's wife and daughters fled the house, refusing ever to return to live there. But John stayed. He had bought the house to protect its history, and he refused to let the darkness win. He saw himself as a guardian. For over 50 years, until his death in 2017, he fought a lone battle against the spirits that resided within those walls. He was often forced to barricade himself in his living room at night, but he never abandoned his post. John was alone in his war against the darkness for 50 years, but you don't have to be alone in the dark. This is exactly the kind of true, terrifying location we explore in our series. If you, like us, dare to stare evil in the face, make sure you follow the world's most haunted places right now. Hit the subscribe button and the bell so you never miss a terrifying update. Turn off the lights, lock your door, and get under the covers, because in this episode of the world's most haunted places, we ask, what did John Humphreys unleash? The answer isn't a simple ghost. It's a perfect storm of evil, built on a foundation of blood and dark rituals. To understand why the ancient Ram Inn is such a paranormal magnet, we have to dig, literally, beneath the floorboards. The house's evil doesn't come from a single event. It's an accumulation of millennia of darkness. The stories, repeated for decades, claim the inn was built directly on a 5,000-year-old pagan burial ground, a place of ritual and death long before the first stone was laid. The location isn't just a graveyard, it's a crossroads. The house sits precisely at the intersection of two powerful ley lines. Ley lines are believed to be ancient, straight tracks of energy connecting sacred and geologically significant sites. The energy from one of these lines is said to flow directly from Stonehenge itself, while the other is linked to Glastonbury Tor. These lines act as a highway for spiritual energy and are believed to feed the paranormal power of the inn. The building itself was erected around 1145. Its original purpose was to house the workers, masons, and, according to some, slaves who were building St. Mary's Church across the street. To build the church, they had to divert a stream that flowed on the property. According to legend, this diversion of running water tore a rip in the spiritual fabric. It opened a portal, unleashing the dark energy bound to the pagan land. But these weren't just theories for John Humphreys. He found the evidence. While working to restore the house, he made a horrific discovery. Hidden beneath a staircase and in an open, grave-like hole in the old bar area, he found the skeletons of several children. Even more terrifying, alongside the small bones, he found ritual daggers. Some sources claim the daggers were broken, a known ritualistic method to bind a spirit or ensure the weapon could never be used again. The skeletons weren't buried, they were sacrificed. John also found other artifacts suggesting witchcraft and devil worship. One report claims the University of Bristol confirmed the age of the daggers, strengthening the theory of ritual murder. What makes this discovery even more sinister is the silence. Archaeological reviews of the area have noted that, despite the widespread claims, there are no official archaeological records of a pagan burial ground at this specific site in the national databases. However, this doesn't dismiss John's findings. Quite the contrary. The lack of an official cemetery makes the discovery of ritually murdered children under his floor even more terrifying. It suggests a hidden, secret, and profane history that was never meant to be discovered. A house with such a violent foundation becomes a magnet for tragedy. The ancient Ram Inn is said to be home to over 20 specific spirits. Some are tragic, others are predators. Most of the phenomena are not random. They are direct, specific echoes of the horrific events that have occurred. A house with such a violent foundation becomes a magnet for tragedy. The ancient Ram Inn is said to be home to over 20 specific spirits. Some are tragic, others are predators. Most of the phenomena are not random. They are direct, specific echoes of the horrific events that have occurred. We begin on the top floor, in the room known today as the Witch's Room. Legend says that in the 1500s, during England's witch panic, a woman accused of witchcraft sought refuge here. She was no witch, likely just a pagan, or a woman who threatened the local church's power. But the inn was no sanctuary. She was found, seized, and dragged out to be burned at the stake, according to some sources, on the orders of the priests from St. Mary's Church across the street. Her tormented and vengeful spirit is said to have returned to the room where she was taken. The echo of her fate is horrifically literal. Those who have challenged her presence or shown a lack of respect have fled the room with inexplicable, painful scratches and sometimes even burn marks on their skin. Above in the attic echoes another tragedy from the 1500s. An innkeeper's daughter, sometimes called Elizabeth, is said to have been murdered up there. Some sources say she took her own life by hanging. Others, that she was murdered and hanged to cover up the crime. Regardless, her death was violent. Her presence isn't just known in the attic. The echo of her death is not subtle. For those who try to sleep in the bishop's room below, they often report being woken in the middle of the night by the unmistakable sound of something heavy, like a lifeless body, being dragged across the floor directly above their heads. Moving downstairs to what is called the men's kitchen, the room believed to be built directly over the original pagan grave, the most heartbreaking sound is heard. Visitors, investigators, and John Humphreys himself constantly reported the ghostly, shrill screams of a wailing infant. This isn't a faint echo. It's a persistent shriek of terror. It's believed to be the direct, horrifying echo of the child skeletons John found buried in the cold earth, sacrificed to dark forces. And then we have the staircase, a site of two distinct and terrifying phenomena. First, this is where a young girl named Rosie is said to have met her end. According to John's daughter Caroline, Rosie was chased, thrown down the stairs, and died instantly from a broken neck. The echo of this violent act is interactive, Many visitors, while walking up the stairs, have suddenly felt an unseen force violently shove them in the back, as if Rosie's spirit is trying to stop them from meeting the same fate, or is simply reliving the violence. Second, the staircase is the location of one of the most famous photographic pieces of evidence ever taken in the house. In June 1999, an investigator took a photograph that clearly shows a man-sized, swirling white mist ascending the stairs, like a spirit in motion. The house seems to record and replay its worst moments over and over for anyone who dares to watch. All haunted locations have an epicenter, a heart of darkness. If the ancient Ram Inn is a portal, this is the room where that portal is widest. Welcome to the Bishop's Room. This is the most infamous, most feared room in the entire house. It was this room that John Humphreys himself, the man who endured demonic attacks for 50 years, avoided when he could. He said he always knocked 3 times on the door before daring to enter, not out of politeness, but out of pure, learned respect for whatever now owned the room. It's a room with such a heavy and immediately malevolent atmosphere that one investigator, a medium, couldn't even make it inside. Merely by opening the door, she was allegedly lifted off the ground and violently thrown across the hallway by an unseen force. Why is it so active? The room was historically used by priests and bishops from St. Mary's Church across the street. Today, their spirits, described by many as dark monks, are still said to watch over it. But they are not alone. Look at the fireplace. One of the house's most brutal legends is of a man who was murdered right here. He allegedly had his head repeatedly forced into the burning fire until he died. The echo of this isn't a quiet sound, it's a horrific, tormented man's scream that is sometimes heard echoing from the cold hearth. But this room also functions as a portal through time. 2 plumbers who were working in the room in the 1970s. They fled in a panic and never came back. Why? They saw a fully equipped Roman centurion riding a horse straight through the wall, across the room, and out the other side. But the most terrifying experience in the bishop's room is physical and modern. In a corner stands a specific chair. An investigator who visited the site described the incident. The oppressive feeling I felt was so intense, it literally terrified me. I struggled to get my breath and had to leave the room. Her husband, a skeptic, then took her place in the chair to prove it was nonsense. It was literally 2 minutes later, she recounted, when he suddenly started choking and gagging and left the room to go straight to the bathroom, convinced he was going to be sick. They call it the choking chair, a fitting name in the most haunted room in England's most haunted house. Tragedy and violence breed ghosts, but the rituals John Humphreys found evidence of, devil worship and child sacrifice, they invite something much worse. The former Bishop of Gloucester once visited the site and called it the most evil place I have ever had the misfortune to visit. He didn't say most haunted, he said most evil. That is a crucial distinction. This is where we must speak of the non-human entities. The tragic spirits, like Rosie and the wailing child, are the first level of the haunting. The violent ones, like the man in the fireplace, are the second. But the ancient Ram Inn harbors a third, darker level. John Humphreys didn't sleep in the bishop's room. He slept on a sofa in another room, which he claimed to share with the most infamous of the Ram Inn's inhabitants, an incubus and a succubus. An incubus, a male sex demon, and a succubus, its female counterpart. These are demonic entities said to feed on the energy of the living, often through sexual assaults on sleeping guests. John claimed he was attacked regularly. Some visitors are said to have been so terrified by these nightly assaults that they jumped from the windows to escape. And in the barn, a 7-foot-tall, over 2 meters, dark figure is said to watch, hostile to men, but strangely partial to certain women. This is no longer a simple haunting. This is a demonic infestation, likely invited and anchored by the dark rituals and blood spilled on this unholy ground. Today, the ancient Ram Inn lives on. After John's death in 2017, responsibility for the 800-year-old dilapidated building fell to his daughter, Caroline Humphreys. Imagine the irony. Caroline was one of those who fled the house in terror as a child. Now she has returned, not to live there, few dare, but to manage her father's legacy. A heavy burden of damp, rot, and demons, driven by a duty to honor the man who sacrificed everything for a building. The site has become a global mecca for paranormal investigators. Famed TV shows have flocked here, leaving shaken. The team from Ghost Adventures was here for their Season 2 episode. Host Zach Bagans described a rage sensation in the bishop's room, a sudden, violent aggression he attributed to a dark entity. And the team from Project Fear conducted one of their most terrifying investigations ever here. They were so shaken, they unanimously called the house demonic and evil. They reported being physically pushed, hearing doors slam in locked rooms, and communicating with a dark force that actively terrorized them through the night. And so, in a final grim irony, the paranormal has become the house's only lifeline. Caroline Humphreys has been open about the crushing maintenance costs. The building is Grade 2 listed, meaning every single repair costs a fortune and must be period accurate. She has said that the pandemic and the lack of visitors nearly broke them financially. John Humphreys bought the house to physically save it from demolition. His paranormal experiences and horrific discoveries are what created the house's modern, dark reputation. Today, it is only the income from ghost hunts, guided tours, and paranormal events that pays for the upkeep and saves the house from crumbling. The house needs its reputation to survive. It needs people to come there to be terrified. The evil has become its own business model. The ancient Ram Inn is more than a haunted place. It is a wound in the landscape, a crossroads of energy, a trap for the dead, and a port for the inhuman. And John Humphreys, the guardian who refused to leave in life, is now said to have joined the other spirits. Many investigators report feeling his presence, a gruff but somehow protective figure, still guarding his property. He who saved the house from a physical death has now stayed forever in death, a prisoner in the very place he tried to preserve. The question is not if you will encounter something at the ancient Ram Inn, but what you will encounter. Thank you for watching. Did you like the video? Don't forget to follow the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Right now, I'm working on the next part of the World's Most Haunted Places series, so turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Until next time, sleep well if you can.